No jail time for a former New York City policeman for killing an unarmed man. A judge reduced Peter Liang's conviction from manslaughter to criminally negligent homicide. The Chinese-American will now serve 5 years probation, 800 hours of community service. In 2014, Liang was on duty when his gun discharged in a stairwell. It ricocheted and struck Asieh Gurley, killing him. Liang's lawyers wanted the conviction thrown out after a junior in the case admitted to lying during the jury selection process. But a judge ruled it was not enough to warrant a new trial. To talk more about this case that's generated so much attention, I'm joined by David DiPietro from Florida. He's a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. David, how unusual is it for the judge to reduce the charge on the day of sentencing?
Well, this was an unusual case. If you look at the facts of it, Officer Liang was doing a standard operation where he was checking the stairwells in a public housing building and inadvertently and accidentally shot his firearm. The bullet ricocheted and killed an innocent man. And really, this is a tragic case where both parties have lost, one had lost his life and one has lost his career. So under the circumstances, just looking at the equity, and the judges are allowed to look at the equities and the totality of the circumstances, Officer Liang probably feels just as guilty and realizes this is a horrible situation, but really did it rise to the level of criminality? And that's the real shock about this case. It doesn't seem like Officer Liang did anything criminal, and the fact that it's made it as far as it has really makes me wonder why this case has gone from prosecution to conviction. And looking at it, the prosecutor has the discretion in this regard. It was the prosecutor's decision to bring it to the grand jury. It was the prosecutor's decision to try this case. And
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Finish your thought. Go ahead. I was just going to ask you. You made a good point, because this is what a lot of Chinese Americans are in fact asking. A lot of people are asking that whether Peter Liang was made a scapegoat here.
Well, looking at, and it's not to judge every other case where you have white officers and African Americans that are unarmed shootings that have come to our political and news light lately. But if you look at this case, when I mean this case, Officer Liang's case, there was no criminal intent. It was totally accidental and inadvertent. So it begs the question: is the Chinese American community politically strong enough in the Brooklyn area? And what was the composition of the jury? And was he a scapegoat for all these other cases? And was it tried in the public arena, not tried on the facts of the case? I think the Chinese Americans that question that have a legitimate point in this case.
And why do you think this case in particular touched such a nerve?
I think it touched such a nerve because it was a totally accidental shooting. It's not that Officer Liang engaged Mr. Gurley and then decided to shoot him at some point in a particular engagement. It was him having the whole theory of the case was he had his finger on the trigger and then he discharged his gun. He was a 28-year-old young man, an American, and he made a mistake. He had been on the job 18 months. Given the fact he wasn't a 30-year veteran, and it looks like training was at issue with the NYPD. The NYPD has some responsibility as it relates to this. It seems like this is a tragic case for all parties included, and I hope the appellate court reverses this conviction, because this conviction is totally unjustified, in my opinion, and I hope they really look at the facts and they do justice by Officer Liang, because I really don't think the facts warrant this conviction.
So what is the message to the victim's family, to Asieh Gurley's family? Will they ever get any kind of closure?
They have a civil case. They have a civil lawsuit. They're probably entitled to monetary compensation. And from the civil sense, Officer Liang messed up, and he's civilly liable, and the NYPD is civilly liable. But just because you're civilly liable and damages are to be paid doesn't mean it rises to the level of criminality. And that's the difference. And I think this is a horrible civil case where the Gurley family deserves compensation, deserves an apology. This is a horrible thing. But horrible things happen in our society and our life all the time. It doesn't mean that a young man like Officer Liang, who swore to do his job lawfully, is guilty of a crime. That's a whole higher standard that really doesn't merit. It has no merit in this case.
Understood. David DiPietro, live for us from Florida. Thank you so much.